Okay, we've looked at how to factor something with 2 terms using a difference of squares, or DOS. We've looked at how to factor something with 3 terms using the x factor when a is 1. Today, we're going to add how to factor something when a is not 1 using the x box. So once again, we're going to use the x box, not the x factor, when a is not equal to 1. And I want you to take a second and highlight, underline, circle, something, what is right below that blank that we always need to look for GCF. We'll be adding in the GCF next week, but I want to remind you in your notes that we always need to check for that. So let's get an example. First of all, when I decide I need to do the x box, the first thing I do is draw an x and draw my box, because sometimes you get so excited about the x you forget to draw the box, and then your answer is just going to be totally wrong. So I just do that part at the beginning. Let's look at an example. 12x squared minus 7x plus 1. And if you remember when we were starting the notes with the x, I told you that you always need to multiply a and c. And last night that was always 1, but now my a is not 1, it's 12. So 12 times 1 will give me a positive 12 at the top of my x instead of the 1 at the end. And you can know you skip this step sometimes when you just can't figure out something to work with the x. And then just like yesterday, our negative 7 goes at the bottom, and we still ask ourselves what multiplies to 12 and adds to negative 7, negative 3, negative 4. Still doesn't matter which order I do that. Now what I need to do is fill my box. Now what I need to do is fill my box. How I fill my box is I always put my first term in the first box. And I always put my last term in the last box. Then my numbers from the side go on my diagonal. Now the only thing is, if you look at the box, it kind of looks weird. It doesn't look like we were used to before, and that's because really it's a negative 4x and a negative 3x. We're really saying what adds to negative 7x in the middle. So I need to remember on my diagonal to put the x. And now we go back to when we were factoring out a GCF from each column and each row when we talked about GCFs. So the GCF of my first column would be 3x. Not 4, because 4 doesn't go into 3. 3x. And nothing is in common with 4 or 1, so I just have to put a 1. If I go to my first row, it would be 4x, because 4 goes into 12 and 4 goes into 4. And my last row is going to be a 1 also. Remember, we have to be careful with our signs. If there's a negative in one of the boxes, then the box next to it is going to be negative. So if this negative 3, it's pulled outside, and that becomes a minus. So now I have factored, and that means that 3x minus 1 times 4x minus 1 is equal to what I started with, which was 12x squared minus 7x plus 1. I'm not going to write that every time. It's just to emphasize this time that I was really just rewriting something. I wasn't solving it, I was just rewriting it. So let's look at another example. How about we do 5x squared minus 22x plus 8. So first let's say, why do I know it's going to be the x box? It's going to be the x box because this number is not 1. So that means that I need to draw my x and draw my box. Once again, I do that at first just so I don't forget to do my box. So I say what multiplies to 40 and adds to negative 22. Don't freak out because of these big numbers. Usually, if you're getting a big number like this, they're going to do something obvious. Maybe something like negative 2 and negative 20. Okay, and if I couldn't see that, I could list my factors of 40. 1, 40, 2, 20, 4, 10, 5, and 8. And we can see that the 2 and the 20 are what going to give me the negative 22. All right, so now that I've finished my x, it's time for me to fill my box. So in order to fill my box, I need to put my first term in the first box. So I'm going to put the 5x squared in the first box. And then I'm going to put my last term, the positive 8, in the last box. And then on my diagonal, I put my two side numbers. And then I'm going to factor my GCF of each column and each row. So if I look at my first column, there's nothing in common with 5 and 2, but I can take out an x. What is the biggest thing that goes into 20 and 8? That would be 4. What goes into 5 and 20? That would be 5x. And what goes into 2 and 8? 2. And remember, to get inside the box, I multiply. So 5x times x, 5x squared. 5x times 4, 20. Wait, where's that negative? Oh, I need to remember, if this is negative, then outside my box is negative. What does that mean about this negative 2x? It means that this that I pulled out needs to be a negative 2. And if I double check that last row, negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative 4 is positive 8. Write down your answer. And we are good to go. All right. If you feel like you've gotten the hang of it, then feel free at any point to start pausing it after I've written the problem and trying it on your own. That would be excellent. And then you can listen to me explain it and check your work. So our next problem is 2x squared minus x minus 1. So I know it's going to be x box because it's 3 terms and a is not 1. Multiply a and c. And that gives me negative 20. Look, I forgot to draw my x box. So I say what multiplies to negative 20 and adds to negative 1. This one should be coming familiar. 5, 4. One of those needs to be negative, and it's going to be the 5 because my 1 is negative. Now we need to fill the box. First term goes in the first box. Last term goes in the last box. And the things from my x go on the diagonal. It doesn't matter which order you do. So if you didn't write down your box the same way, just double check our final answer is the same. And now factor our GCF. So the GCF of 2x squared and 4x is 2x. The GCF of 5 and 10 is 5. The GCF of 2x squared and negative 5x is x. And the GCF of 4 and 10 is 2. And now I need to be careful with my signs. That negative 5 makes this a negative 5. And this positive 4 means that this is a plus 2. Write down your answer. 2x minus 5 times x plus 2. The end. Amen. Okay, I think we're going to do about 3 more examples. So you should be getting the hang of this, so press the pause button once I've written down the problem and try it on your own. 3x squared minus 13x plus 4. So I know it's going to be x box because the 3 is there, and it's not a GCF. So I go ahead, draw the x in the box so I don't forget anything. Multiply a and c. 3 times 4 is 12. Put b at the bottom, the negative 13. And I say what multiplies to 12 and adds to negative 13. Don't get stressed about this one. It's just going to be 12 times 1, but both of them are negative. Now we need to fill the box. First term goes in the first box. Last term goes in the last box. And my x goes on the diagonal. Factor out your GCF. I get x, 4, 3x, and 1. Now just check your signs. I have a negative 12, so that needs to be negative. I have a negative 1, that needs to be negative. So x minus 4 times 3x minus 1. Once again, just to emphasize, the order does not matter. The order does not matter. Two x squared plus 3x plus 1. It's x box because a is not 1, and it is also not a GCF that I could just pull out. So 2 times 1 gives me 2 at the top of my x. And then I say what multiplies to 2 and adds to my b, which is 3. And that would just be 2 and 1. Some of these you really don't need to be overthinking. 2x squared goes first, because first term goes in the first box. And my last term goes in the last box. My terms for my x go on the diagonal. Then I factor out my GCF, which would be 2x, 1, 1x or just x, and 1. Now this time I'm going to double check. X times 2x is 2x squared. X times 1 is 1x. 1 times 2x is 2x, and 1 times 1 is 1. Notice I had no negatives in there, so I can just put both of those are positive, and I can write my final answer. And I don't even need to ask, did I get the right answer? I know I got the right answer because I multiplied, which undoes factoring. There we go. And one more. And then you're done. 2x squared plus 5x minus 12. Once again, try this one on your own for a couple minutes, and then press play to see if you got the right answer. 2 times negative 12 is negative 24. Make sure we aren't losing that negative there. Negative 24. We need to plop this 5 down at the bottom. I know this is one of the ones that we had some trouble on in class today with the x. It's going to be 8 and 3. Y'all got a little bit stuck on 4 and 6. So it should be that the 8 is positive. You're adding to a positive 5. I need to fill in the box. First term, first box. Last term, last box. And my stuff for my x goes on the diagonal. Factor out GCF. X, 4, 2x, 3. Check your signs. That's a positive 8. So this is a positive 4. And this negative 3 means this is a negative 3. Now let's check. 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times 4 is 8x. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x, and negative 3 times positive 4 is negative 12. I know I have the right answer. You should know that you got a 100 on this test without me even having to grade it, because you're going to check all of your questions by multiplication, right? Okay. There we go. If you want to try a couple more of those problems, then have at it. Otherwise, you are done. Have a very happy spring break.